Pretty neat trip, albeit this one heading north is Wildwood as the Warriors are in Cooperstown this weekend. We check in now with head coach Rich Hans joining us from the team bus. Rich, appreciate you taking the time. How's the weekend going so far?
So far, Mike.
So far, so good. I know you and your kids have been waiting for this for a long time. I mean, what's the schedule like this weekend? I know you guys are trying to do a lot of things in a condensed amount of time.
Well, yeah, we're only here for the weekend until Sunday. But yesterday, when we got here, we had we checked into the hotel, and then we went over to the Cooperstown Hall of Fame. We visited the museum until it closed. So we were there for about an hour. And then we went out to a team dinner, which was pretty neat, get a little bit of team bonding in. And then we went back to the hotel, and now we're up early on our way to the game right now in the bus. We got a game about an hour away from our hotel on an AstroTurf field up here, so it should be a good time.
We are seeing some local teams take this trip, and I know it's popular to go south, and, if you can do that, great. But this is a pretty cool trip, too. I know Millville, Bridgeton, those baseball teams doing a similar trip later on in the season. I mean, to see your kids see the history of the game, how cool is that? What were some of the reactions to seeing some of the history of the sport there at the museum yesterday?
It means a lot. The kids love it. They understand baseball because, us as coaches bring a lot of passion to the game, and we try to teach them, how to play the game the right way. And we talk about the guys that they saw yesterday in the Hall of Fame. So it was neat to see the reactions. And obviously there's some newer players in there, so they know some of them. And, they were taking pictures with the uniforms, and it was neat for them to see, the old uniforms and the old gloves and the old bats and stuff like that. It was like they were in awe, they didn't really understand. Like one of the things that the kids were talking about was the bat that Babe Ruth used. Well, it's 36 inches and 48 ounces. Today we use 32-inch bats and 29 ounces. Half these kids wouldn't even be able to swing that bat. So they were pretty shocked about that.
Just a different time back then. I'm always interested to know, Rich, the planning that goes into something like this. Whose brainchild was this? When was this idea born? And then how much hard work has it taken to get here? I know, communities like Wildwood, you have to really fundraise this thing, and I know you guys were really hot on the trail in terms of putting the money together to do this.
Yeah, well, we fundraise all year round for our we go to Disney every 2 years. So this was one of our off years for Disney trip, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. And we have a good group of kids, that really, get out and fundraise pretty good. So I thought this would be the year to take this trip. And we have a school up here that always comes down in the preseason to play us. It's Mikel Christian Academy. They always come down in March and stay for a whole weekend, and we play them 2 or 3 times over the weekend. So I had called him and asked him if he wanted to play us up here because we were going to take a trip to Cooperstown. And I got a call last week saying that our game on Doubleday Field was canceled because of the weather, and they couldn't get the field ready because they still had snow up here. So I reached out to the coach that we had the game set up with at Cooperstown Stadium, and he set me up 3 games with local high school teams, and we're playing on AstroTurf Field. So luckily I had that contact, and the trip wasn't just, it would have been a good trip anyway, but you come on these trips to see what you want to see, and then you also come to play baseball and get some practice in and some game experience in. So it was good that I had that contact because, without him, we'd be up here right now without playing any games.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty neat deal. Obviously devastating at first that you can't play on the historic Doubleday Field, but what does that say about the coaching fraternity? Even a contact you have so far away from home would reach out and help out and get you guys some games up there.
Oh, it's awesome. I've been coaching at Wildwood now for 14 years, and the contacts that you make, even back home, the coaching friendships that you make and the contacts that you make is just, second to none. It's great because you build a friendship with people, all over the place. I got coaches in New York. When we go to Florida, we meet different coaches, you exchange information with them, and it's a nice thing.
Catching up right now with Rich Hans, head coach of the Wildwood Baseball program. Him and his kids spending a fun weekend up in Cooperstown, New York right now on the bus on the way to a game as we speak. Rich, obviously, you're a Tri-County team in the middle of Cape Atlantic League country. Sometimes Wildwood, for whatever reason, gets a little bit overlooked, whether it's on shows like this or in the newspaper. But you have a lot of talent on your team right now, a lot of young talent, some guys with some bright futures. And, give me some names, some kids that if people haven't heard of these guys, they will be hearing about them this year and maybe even next year.
Yeah, well, I think they've heard about them now. I mean, we went into the playoffs last year and we played, very well in the playoffs. We beat Woodbury, and a lot of teams didn't know about these players last year because they were freshmen and sophomores. But, Brendan Bean, who's a sophomore now, is verbally committed to Penn University already, and I also have Chris Mormilli, who's a junior now, who throws in the upper 80s, just as good as a player, and they're both, very, very, very competitive and put a lot of hard work into the game. And, we also have some other players. Andrew Mormilli, Chris's younger brother, is a sophomore. We got Billy Boley, who's my number 3 pitcher, who was my number 1 pitcher when he was a freshman until, Chris and Brendan came along. We have Anthony Corbellis, who's a senior outfielder, and James Brule, who's basically the nucleus of our team. He's our catcher. And then around them there are a lot of, younger, talented players that fill in where we need them to fill in at.
Rich, how have you built that culture at a school like Wildwood? I mean, it's no secret. It's one of the smallest public schools, if not the smallest public school, sophomore to senior enrollment in the state, at least for teams that compete under the NJSIAA banner. And, you see some other sports at Wildwood struggle to get some numbers out, but it seems like every year, not only do you have the kids coming out for the team, but you have talented kids coming out. I mean, how has this progressed, I should say? Is it sort of year to year, just sort of building this one brick at a time?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, that's for sure. The first 3 years I was here, we struggled winning 1 or 2 games. I would have to schedule some, a lesser opponent just so that we could stay competitive. And, when I first started coaching, we were in the CAL, so we were playing a lot of bigger schools. So at times that was hard, and I would reach out and try to get a Tri-County opponent, like a smaller school, like a Clayton or a Salem. And at the beginning, they would beat us pretty good too, because they knew what they were going up against. And we certainly knew what we were going up against. But, the whole thing is being competitive and not getting 10 runs every game, like we were doing when I first started coaching. And once you get the kids to believe that they can do it and be competitive, it's not all about the wins and losses. But once you start to become competitive and you start winning a couple games, it kind of feeds itself. The kids get hungry and they see that you got to put the time in, the hard work, and it just, started to pay off. When I first started coaching, I couldn't even get 10 or 11 kids out for the team. Now we have 24, 25 kids, and we're fielding a JV and a varsity team.
Obviously, miles from where you started right now, and I know you're excited about your team's chances this year, really one of the contenders in league play. What are those realistic expectations for your Warriors this season?
Well, I mean, with Gloucester Catholic moving into our division, and, we have opponents like Pennsville and Gloucester City, it may be a little tough to win the Tri-County Classic Conference, but I can certainly see us being, a spoiler in the Group 1 South Jersey tournament. I think that we could play with any one of those teams. We beat Pennsville last week. Pittman's a very good team. We hung in there with them. Just so happened that we played 3 games last week, so it's kind of a tough road and the wet conditions and stuff like that. But, you're always not going to play your A game. So the kids understand that, and they'll bounce back from that loss. Hopefully we get 2 wins up here, and we get, on a roll when we get back home. We got 3 games next week.
Rich, I wanted to ask you before I let you go, and this is down the road, but that Warrior Classic tournament you put together, it's almost that unofficial Cape May County Championship. That's become a really neat event as well. I mean, how much do you and your kids look forward to that? And this is later on down the road, I believe, later on, or maybe mid-May. But it's a fun deal, and again, it's one of those deals that's sort of grown year to year.
Yeah, they really enjoy it. It's bragging rights, and they're playing against local kids, and we don't really get to play those teams on a year-to-year basis unless we go out and schedule them as non-conference opponents. And when we go to Florida, it's hard because we play 5 games in Florida, and then our Tri-County Conference schedule is pretty heavy with conference games and crossover games. So when we do schedule out-of-conference opponents, I always try to schedule lower, Cape May Tech, Middle Township, Wildwood Catholic, and teams like that. So the reason why we put the tournament together at first is because, when we do go to Florida, it's kind of hard to get those teams to come and play because sometimes we don't have enough games, we don't have spots on the schedule, or then, the dates just don't match up. So with the tournament, it's like, a guarantee you're at least going to play a couple of them every year.
Absolutely. Rich Hans and his Wildwood Warriors right now up in Cooperstown, New York. Coach, thanks for taking the time on a game day. Have fun the rest of the weekend. I know it's a great experience, and hopefully we'll check in with you again later on in the season.
No problem, Mike. Thanks a lot.
All right, Rich Hans, head coach of the Wildwood Warriors baseball team. Again,